Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized.
So the Epstein story just got even more interesting, and the whole reason is from one of the most unexpected and unlooked for sources from directly within the White House. Now look, context is very important. If you haven't seen my original video on the Epstein files covering this situation, I highly recommend you check that out first. I'll put the links to that below. But if you're up to speed, buckle up. A brand new amusement ride just opened up. On April 9th, Melania Trump walks into the grand foyer of the White House, sits there, and gives a 6-minute speech. A 6-minute speech of a topic that nobody had any idea what she was going to discuss, not even her husband. After she gives said speech, she doesn't take a single question, leaves the entire audience stunned, and walks away. And Washington has honestly been reeling ever since. Now look, at a time when everybody is trying to publicly distance themselves from Jeffrey Epstein, from Ghislaine Maxwell, and doing everything that they can to just deny, look over there, don't look over here. I understand perhaps the reasoning behind Melania doing this, but you have to really question the timing.
To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence.
And this speech felt very measured. It felt very lawyered up, very just making sure that she ticked all the boxes and that she said the right things that she needed to say. She's not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce her to Donald Trump. And then she acknowledged, one of the only times that she appeared within the files that have been released so far, an email between Maxwell and her where she is referred to as Sweet Pea.
My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note.
And like I said, denying, wanting to distance yourself, well, that's something that every public figure who wants to protect themselves is trying to do. But they're not doing it right now. They're not doing exactly at this moment in time because, I don't know, there's this little war that's going on in the Middle East that we're involved in, and that is dominating the headlines, dominating all the news talking points. If you even go and look at the Google search trends on the Epstein files, it is way, way down. Nobody was discussing this. This wasn't even the PR time. This wasn't the momentum or the time needed to bring light upon this situation. I mean, she just raised her hand in class when nobody called on her and just voluntarily word vomited.
Epstein was not alone. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony.
The First Lady is calling for transparency, is calling for survivor hearings, is calling for individuals to be prosecuted, is going, no, there are still criminals, there are still people involved in this Epstein circle who are at large. Which, hell yeah, that's exactly what we've been saying. The problem, though, is that it's coming from within the White House. This same White House who's been kind of working to move past the whole Epstein narrative, trying to get us over that situation and downplay everything. I mean, the DOJ just denied a subpoena of Pam Bondi days before she gave this speech. I mean, we just got dumped millions of pages of files of heavily redacted stuff, of videos, of photos, of correspondences. You have years of survivor testimonies, of stories, of witness statements, and yet the DOJ has come out and said, yeah, we're not prosecuting anyone. Trump has personally been suggesting that, hey, the country's ready to move on and forget about this whole unfortunate Epstein event. And never mind Iran's uranium enrichment. I mean, the First Lady just walked straight into the White House and dropped a nuke.
Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized.
And it's been chaos ever since. I mean, the White House officials said they knew she was making a statement. They just didn't know it was going to be this. Then when her office was asked for further questions on this, well, they directed all those questions to the West Wing. The West Wing went hit with those questions, then redirected them right back to Miss Trump. And round this PR shit show is spun. And you can read that one of two ways. Either the Trump White House and administration is just so disorganized at the moment that the First Lady can walk into one of the most iconic rooms and talk about one of the most politically sensitive topics on earth without anybody coordinating this or having knowledge on it, or she did it deliberately out of West Wing control, and she had her reasons. And the one question nobody has seemingly answered yet is, does Donald Trump agree with his own wife? Because honestly, all this is doing is just reopening the can of worms that is the Epstein files. And I can't help but feel like this is something that the Trump administration does not want to deal with at this particular moment in time, which lends credence to the theory, why is Melania doing this right now? Is she trying to get out in front of something? Has she been made aware of a story, of a bombshell, of something that's coming, and this is her running interference? This is her getting out in front of things. Because amidst her speech, there is some carefully worded language about those that she has gotten to retract statements about her in the past, about those that she has fought that her lawyers have taken on. And I can't help but feel like if you read in between the lines there's a little bit of a warning to someone out there. We just don't know who. But you know the positive from all this? We're talking about the Epstein files again. And we should be. But I want to talk about the survivors for a second, because their reaction should tell you everything. Alicia Arden, who has said publicly that she was attacked by Epstein back in 1997, said the statement was brave, and she's willing to testify. Members of Congress are now rallying, trying to say, yeah, let's start hearing from the survivors. Gloria Allred, who represents 27 survivors, supports the hearing, but says no survivor should be subpoenaed. That participation has to be voluntary, because these women have been through enough. And I agree. And there are those survivors like the family of Virginia Giuffre, like other survivors who have said, we have been through years of testimony. We have been through years of dealing with courts and nothing has been done. Why should we have to reopen old wounds? Why is the burden of all of this somehow being put back onto the survivors, being back on to the victims? And their exact words were, survivors have done their part. Now it's time for those in power to do theirs. And read that again. Survivors have done their part. It's time for those in power to do theirs. They're not asking to tell their stories again. They're not asking to be heard. They've already done that over and over again. What they're asking for is justice. Justice from a system and justice from an institution that failed them miserably. And how is justice served? How is accountability finally found? Well, that comes from prosecutions. That comes from the DOJ being willing to actually do its job, from being willing to ask hard questions from those in power.
Epstein was not alone.
I hope that it provides an impetus. I hope that it provides more pressure that we can place on our political leaders, that we can place on our institutions, which have failed the survivors. The most important thing in this situation, I will continue to say, is the victims, the people whose lives have been forever altered by this massive ring, this coordinated effort that just exploited so many, countless women, countless underage women. One of the most horrific sex trafficking, sex organization schemes that we have ever seen, that was covered up by the elite, that was covered up by the powerful. It is time to bring justice to the victims. And who knows what our true intentions are, whether it is just an act of political self-preservation or whether this truly is courage. Either way, the one thing that I do know is that the victims don't need to be handed the microphone again. What they truly deserve is answers. Real ones. Not redacted files. Not half of the files. They deserve real answers and accountability from the people and the institutions that had the power to act and chose not to. And until that happens, this story isn't going anywhere. It's just getting started.